Well, wouldn't you know, chat? Wouldn't you know, second channel? This channel still does exist, and we still are supposed to be uploading to it. And we haven't done a movie night all year. Hopefully that will change soon. But The Last of Us beat movie night rather to it. And here we are with our first official second channel content of the year. Besides, obviously, the looking back in reflection, looking forward to 2022 and 2023 respectively. Video, which did come out this year because I was also late on that. I see Ciclet has shown up on chat. I'm getting a Last of Us ad right now. He hasn't even seen the stream. He didn't even know that he cut off my fucking introduction. I'd say as a substitute for the majority of people, The Last of Us game is sleep-inducing. Secondary ENT cretins. CeeLo Pills talking shit. I couldn't remember if Heath was a negative Last of Us game bloke or a positive Last of Us game bloke, but he's just revealed himself. But yes, we are live on Twitch. We're trying to revitalize Twitch in the year of our Lord 2023, and we've done an alright job so far. I've streamed 3 times a week for the first 2 weeks. We've got the viewership up a little bit, but I wouldn't count on chat being too alive this stream, but maybe they will be. Right over to head out. I still haven't played this game. We will definitely be spoiling the game we will. This is not for people who have just checked out The Last of Us and don't want future spoilers, because I'm pretty sure they're going to be following the game pretty closely. So I guess we should talk about that at the very beginning. So get out of here if you don't want spoilers for anything Last of Us related that exists. He says, I've hardly even played the games. Yes, you just said they were sleep-inducing. Have a good day, everybody. CeeLo Pilled has to dip. And Ciclet is advertising for himself, as you do. And I also think, I actually don't know Ciclet's The Last of Us / Naughty Dog status. Turth is here. Hasn't been here for a while. Is Ellie's performance good? Was one of my apprehension about the trailers. I had the same apprehension in one of our previous streams that you could probably go. It definitely is still up on the Twitch channel as a VOD. We watched all the trailers recently because I had avoided them, not out of determination or something to remain unspoiled. But in the trailers, Bella Ramsey as Ellie did seem kind of cringe and kind of bad. But then there were also clips released, and I did like her in the clips, and I very much did like her in the episode. I thought she was great. So the trailers were not. The trailers were trying to be generic trailers. Trailers aren't really made by the people who actually make the movies. They're made by separate trailer houses. That's at least how I understand the process to work. How YouTube has told me the process works. But yeah, so they tried to do the generic self-aware joke funny stuff, and it didn't really work in the trailer, plus the drama that didn't really work in the trailer. But in the episode, she was one of the highlights, I think. But yes, all the acting was great. Yes, I think so. It is interesting that Marlene, and I did look it up to reaffirm it because I had asked this question when we were watching the trailers on stream the other day, but nobody answered me. Marlene is played, and I believe is the only character that has the same actress in the game and in the TV show, which is cool. She sounds just like her, and she, funnily enough, looks just like her. A lot of the other characters don't look anything like. Troy Baker doesn't exactly look like Joel, and Ashley Johnson doesn't exactly look like Ellie, so that was sort of out of the question. But Marlene works, and I like that they kept her. It's not jarring that she's the same and everybody else is different. I feel like it works. This is the one where they complained about about a child being ugly. Are people complaining about Bella Ramsey being ugly or whatever? She is actually not a child, because we looked it up recently. She is 19 somehow. She seemed, which makes her only 2 years younger than me. And when I was watching Game of Thrones, I definitely thought she was a dumb little kid and I was a grown-ass adult in 2016 when I was 15 or something. So that kind of blew my mind. And Heath is answering that question because we looked it up on stream. That's how he knows it. Or he might have told me. I don't remember. But Sickler's like, what? Yes, indeed. But let's not jump the gun. We've talked about Bella Ramsey a little bit already. I guess that's all the intro things. I guess background on My Last of Us, I played both games. For a very distinct period of time, The Last of Us Part 1 was my favorite game of all time. Then The Last of Us 2 came out, knocked that shit into the dirt, said, fuck this puny-ass game, became my favorite game of all time. The Last of Us has continued to drop a little bit. I think Uncharted 4 is better than it now. My favorite Pokemon game I probably like more than The Last of Us Part 1. Not specifically part 1, because I haven't played the remake, actually. I've only played the original, because I don't have a PS5. You got to feel for her. She's surely got to be typecast as a kid for a few more years now. Yes, this is definitely true. She's in Tracy Beaker, maybe? Ciclet's talking about the actress, maybe? I have no idea what Tracy Beaker is, so... oh, it's funny. She's older than Ciclet, huh? And Ciclet was calling her a kid. Ha ha ha. Embarrassing. But yes, that's my Last of Us history. I like all the games. I played all the Uncharted games too. They're the best. Actually, 4 and Lost Legacy. They're the best. 1, 2, and 3, they're pretty good. But so yes, we're invested as Last of Us fans here. I'm emotionally mature, indeed. Going into the show, I was like, why are we doing this? But Neil Druckmann said he was working with it, and you can tell through the episode. And coming out of it, I thought the episode was, I think I said on Twitter, I thought it was pretty good, probably great. I guess there wasn't anything singularly that blew me away massively, but everything was just really good, I think. There are maybe some slip-ups, but we'll talk about that as we progress. Interestingly, it starts... because there are a lot of things that have changed, which is expected, and I don't really need it to follow the game exactly, and that would be a very short TV show I'd expect. But the first change is that we start in 1968, I believe, on a TV show sort of panel thing, which is interesting. I'm not sure if this is a reference to something that actually happened in real life, but this is sort of the canonization of the ant meme. Now, I don't know if in data entries or something, or some shit you can pick up and read in the first game they reference this, but every YouTube video ever made about the original The Last of Us in 2013 loved to bring up that it was the fungal is based off a real life ant thing. I don't know if that had ever been brought up. It's never been brought up expressly in a cutscene in the actual series. It might be again in a data entry. But the first scene is sort of a tease of that. Now I remember because I actually have watched the first making of The Last of Us, not part 1, but the original The Last of Us. Isn't this confusing to talk about? The 2013 edition on the PS3. I have watched the documentary that comes with the Last of Us 2014 remake on PS4. Not really a remake, more of a remaster. I believe it's specifically called The Last of Us Remastered. There was an included documentary on that. About the making of the first game. They do talk about it in that, but again, I'm not sure if it's ever been made expressly canonized in the video games, but here it was in the first scene. I like the first scene. It has sort of the Druckmanised sort of Naughty Dog wit to it, as does most of the show, so I was impressed and I liked it. It's also a little because obviously there are some people that don't really know where we're going with this, so it's also a tease of ooh, fungus is going to come. And it sort of introduces that the zombies in this show are fungal versions of zombies. But we'll talk more about that. They never explained how the cordyceps mutates to infect humans in the game. No, it's left ambiguous. Interesting. It is kind of funny that the implication is that global warming did it in the show. I thought we might have got it a little heavy-handed with the political commentary there, but I think it was fine. Plus, the actual planet has gotten hotter, and this Last of Us shit isn't real, so it has to be something different. The next big change is we time skip to 2003 instead of 2013. Outbreak Day, as it's known in sort of the fandom, and Naughty Dog themselves use this term, is as sort of it's something in 2013, whatever the day where the outbreak starts and the day of the setting of the first of the prologue of the first game, which happens in 2013, which is the year the game came out. Kind of in the same vein, initially we skip forward to 2003 so that we can skip forward 20 years to 2023, which is this year contemporaneously for us. I thought that was clever or whatever. Maybe. I think I like it. It's another kind of unnecessary change, but to contemporarize it. I don't think that's a word. Bacon makes fun of me for thinking contemporaneously isn't a word. But it is. To make it contemporary, I guess, is the word I'm actually looking for. The phrase, rather, because it's multiple words, chat. You see, you're writing this down. I'm giving you English lessons. So, yeah, they changed that, which I think it's fine. It doesn't really affect anything. And I guess it's cute. There was a point I was going to relate that to a little bit more. It is interesting, though, The Last of Us takes place in 2033. I don't think we ever really conceptualize it as that. But obviously technology hasn't exactly progressed or anything like that because of that fucking zombie apocalypse that happens. I don't know if we're going to go through the scenes like this chronologically, but we get a lot more pre-outbreak stuff with Sarah, particularly in the inside the episode, which I did watch. I don't know if I said that before we started recording or afterwards, so I might be repeating myself, but fuck you. They point out how they sort of make Sarah sort of the protagonist of this first bit of the episode, which is definitely true. And obviously in the game, you play as Sarah for a little bit here. It's like a neat little parallel where you play as Sarah at the beginning and then Ellie at the very end. See Joel from an outside perspective, and sort of they both alienate him. How interesting. What a good bookend to a good game. But yeah, I don't think we want to go chronologically with this. I think the Sarah actress was good too. I'm sure there's some drama about her being black, but whatever. Let me bring up my notes here since I've been ad-libbing this, though I do have one note that says intro scene with an exclamation point. Let's talk about some things generally. Again, I think most of the acting was pretty good, but there are a lot of changes, which I think are all fine at this point. It's not like changes that hurt the overall way of the story or the direction of the story, because I honestly don't know how that happens. It's a very different adaptation to Chainsaw Man. If you were recently watching my video, not my video, but it's uploaded on the Ordinary RE channel, on RE's second channel, where we talk about the beginning of Chainsaw Man and the anime and stuff, and I'm complaining about the Chainsaw Man anime. We've been doing this a lot on stream recently. These are obviously two very different types of adaptations. Chainsaw Man is basically trying to be by the books until it needs to fill time. Be by the book, rather. Or I guess there are multiple volumes, which would mean multiple books. Whereas this is changing things constantly. There are very few direct lines, though there are some, and we'll talk about them in a second. And the plot beats are kind of similar, but especially the macro plot beats, I think, are going to be similar. Joel is going to take Ellie across the country. Tess is probably going to die at some point, probably in a very similar way. The resolution will probably be the same with Marlene, etc., etc. Abby post-credit scene, all the things we need. But there's a lot different. Like, everything with Robert is different. Everything with Tommy seemingly is different. And that's kind of a macro story beat. So we are changing a lot of things very expressly. And it's definitely the way I would prefer this to be done. Let's add some stuff. Let's flesh out some stuff if necessary. That'll be fun. I think this is something we should talk about at the beginning, which is the intro song, which they just used the Last of Us song, the one with the guitar, the one you are thinking of right now if you didn't watch the episode. And they used it for the intro song, and it was great. It was soy boy chills up and down your spine. It was the best. I think generally, again, the Druckmanization is very evident. I think it's most evident in the Ellie scenes, which are probably the most important scenes, and I think Ellie is probably the best part of that first game. Maybe the second game. And her sort of attitude. But yeah, I guess we will talk about that more later. So let's start with the things they slightly changed or the direct lines they kept. There are, every time a line, because we would get into a scenario and it would be very similar to the game, and I sort of knew which lines they were going to keep before they did it. Like, I knew they were going to do the I sell drugs, hardcore drugs line, because it is sort of that iconic first line of that game. I know, I remember thinking, like, that's when you realize The Last of Us is good, is that line. And sort of the sarcastic back and forth Joel and Sarah have in that moment where he doesn't get mad at her for even knowing what drugs are or something. He just says, well, start helping out with the mortgage then, I think is the exact line. I think Pedro Pascal's line is a little different. I feel like every time they did the same line from the game, it made the show look worse in comparison. Now, this is probably because I've watched a million playthroughs of the first game. I've played through, especially the beginning, like 3 or 4 times. Probably more, where I've like made people play it as I watched, because I was still in that phase when I was in love with this game. I did that with at least 2 people. No, 3. I've probably seen the beginning like 5 or 6 hours, or played the beginning 5 or 6 hours, like literally on my PlayStation like 6 times, plus the many playthroughs I must have watched. Jesus Christ. So it's probably because the other lines and how they're said nearly exactly is ingrained in my brain that I'm like, well, it's just kind of worse when you do it. So for that, we had the drugs line, the your watch is broken line, which wasn't that much worse, but it was still delivered differently. Sarah's death as well, and the plea. I don't know. I bought the baby girls from Pedro Pascal less than I bought them from Troy Baker, I guess. And I think there were a few other examples of exact lines. These are the 3 that I wrote down. And I wrote this all down from memory. This wasn't notes. These aren't notes I was taking as I was watching it. Oh, I think another thing to point out is that the pilot is an hour and 20 minutes long, which is very interesting. You can only really do that on HBO, as I understand. Well, I guess everything's on streaming now, so you could probably do that with anything. This ain't network television. But it was an interesting choice. It definitely made the first episode feel like a journey. I feel like it ended in maybe not the most opportune place, maybe. Like, it doesn't seem like that impactful of an ending, though it does parallel some things, obviously, though I don't think I like that parallel. But we'll talk about that a little bit more later. But every time it drew a direct comparison to the game, I did prefer the game. There wasn't a direct line where I was like, wow, the show just did that better. But I feel like, of course, I'm going to be partial to the way the game did it. And it is one of those games where it's like, just because you get like professional actors to do it, or professional big time actors to do it, The Last of Us is so well acted, the game, that it's not like inherently going to be better, and I don't think it is. So with any other video game, it probably would have been easy to do it better, but I guess not with this one. The slightly altered scenarios are actually interesting. Now, I also, besides the Inside the Episode, I also did watch the trailer for the Weeks Ahead, or whatever it was called, which showed some other things that were a little different. But these are all the slightly changed scenarios, and not all of them, just all the ones I wrote down. How Robert was involved was completely different. Tess's character was completely different, and that sort of ties into the Robert stuff. They flesh out the neighbor. Joel shoots the neighbor in the beginning of the game, and Sarah sort of has this moment of like, you shot him, and like they're clearly familiar, but all the familiarity is implied. Whereas we obviously show Sarah interacting with the neighbors a lot more in this version. And it's obviously the old woman that Joel kills, and he doesn't shoot her. He hits her with a what do you call those things? A wrench, maybe? Sarah's involvement, obviously, at the beginning is a lot different. Marlene and Ellie's relationship history, I think, is a lot different, because I feel like they're more familiar. Like, we see Ellie and Marlene meet for the first time in this episode. Well, since she was a baby, meet for the first time. We'll talk about all of these in more detail in a second. Joel and Tommy's relationship status is incredibly different, because Joel and Tommy are, like, basically implied to have been separated for years. At the beginning of the first game, or when they meet up again later, or when at some time when Tommy is brought up. I think maybe at Bill. Obviously, Bill and Frank are mentioned much earlier too. And also, I don't think Joel knew who Frank was at all, but he seems to expressly know who Frank is in this version. So that's another little difference. And Tess's character is very different as the last one I had, but I said that one earlier. Sarah going into that house at night was scary, not gonna lie, Heath was saying. Well, I knew they were setting up for the fact, like, as soon as the neighbors were introduced and they were, like, I thought the first scene with them where the old dude is just feeding, like, the old grandma the food, I thought that was all we were going to get, and immediately I was like, oh, that's to flesh out, so when Joel shoots him later, it'll feel more impactful. And so whenever Sarah would go back over there, and then later when she went back in the house, I knew, well, she's going to be fine. We're going to shoot. So I don't know. Maybe that undermined the scariness factor for me. There was something I wanted to bring up. Oh, there was that cool shot where it sort of blurred the old woman out in the background as she was sort of having her first zombie conniption, as Sarah was getting the DVD, which was one of the... I can't remember. I think those movies are referenced in the first game, but I'm specifically thinking of a Dina-Ellie conversation at the beginning of the second one where they're going through sort of the snowy houses. They talk about the whatever and the Viper, and that was the movie that Sarah borrowed from the neighbors. So that was a cute little nod. There are a bunch of cute little nods like that. I guess we should talk about some of these more specifically. I feel like the Marlene Ellie stuff is probably the best stuff in the episode. They're going to do a lot more with Marlene's character. This was something they even did a little bit in part 2, where they sort of gave Abby's dad more so the steadfast, like, let's do this, let's kill her, and get the cure, whereas Marlene is more conflicted. And obviously there is that voice message you can find of Marlene very conflicted, but that's very missable, and I completely missed it my first time through. So I think we'll be fleshing Marlene out quite a bit more to make the Joel killing her at the end hit harder. Because I feel like in my first version I was like, yeah, kill her, let's get out of here, bro. There wasn't a lot of conflict there, so I think they'll build that up more. I can't remember how much Ellie knows about her mother in the first game. I feel like she knows that her and Marlene used to be friends. Because there is a funny moment where she's like, are you my mom or something? And it's such an Ellie-like line to be like, for her to be so sarcastic throughout the whole thing, and then sarcastically but actually care when she asked that question. The Ellie stuff was very good this episode. I think it might be the best part. Her, because we actually watched the clip of her counting to 10 and then saying fuck you when she gets to 8, but it was blurred out because it was on the Jimmy Fallon show or whatever the fuck, one of those shows. That scene was great. There is something to be said. There were 2 girl swears in this episode that weren't convincing, and I think Ellie did have one of them. I think it was a motherfucker, not just a fuck you. And I think Tess also had one that wasn't as convincing. We should definitely talk about Tess's character being very different. I can't remember if I cut this from my Black Sails video, because I think I did, because I'm like, I'm not a sexist, but it'll definitely seem like I am if I keep this in the video, which was about, I wanted to praise Hannah New as Eleanor Guthrie in the first episode and throughout her whole role in Black Sails for pulling off swearing very well, because there's something I've noticed about female actresses swearing that sometimes comes off very ingenuine. Now, I actually have experience with this in scripts where there are like swear words. Now, obviously, they're better actors than I am script reading. They're better actors and actresses than I am script reader. Than I am a script reader. You know what I'm trying to say. But to try and phony up sort of the headspace or the vocal tone for like a joke, or to be angry or something as you're saying something, is incredibly difficult. And it comes off corny and unnatural almost every time I try to do it, and I usually cut it or just say it without the swear. So I understand this pain, is what I'm saying, and I'm an elite level actor. But I have noticed this also being the case. It just is hard to sort of... Now, in real life, this is never an issue. If a girl's mad in real life and she's swearing, I've never once been like, well, that seemed ingenuine. But it seems to be harder for girls for whatever reason, actresses, to swear sometimes. I don't know. It's just something I've noticed, and I was curious about that coming in because Ellie swears a lot, and Ashley Johnson pulls it off great, and Tess especially in the game. That actress's voice is like perfect for the character Tess is in the game, and swearing and all that. So there was two. There was one Ellie one and one Tess one where I cringed a little as they swore because I felt it came off ingenuine or phony or something. That's just a little dot point I have at the end. But for the most part, Ellie was very good. The Ellie Joel scene, because they constructed that very differently, because they run away with Marlene and then go and find Ellie. And then because the way they were doing it, I'm like, are they even going to have Ellie try and jump Joel when they first meet? And I was like, that's a big missed opportunity. But they actually did have that, or make it that way. A great piece of acting in the episode. Now I've just undermined my whole point to jump to a different point on a tangent. But Marlene getting mad at her like second in command by saying that she had like one fucking ear and to shut the fuck up or whatever. That moment or her whole performance there from Marlene was very good. You felt the urgency, you felt the frustration, you felt she's shot, Fedra's on the way. She was great in that scene. I thought that scene was really good. Now it did sort of, because you do get more Marlene interacting, especially with Tess, like the "you're not looking so hot." I like those interactions in the game a lot, and that's completely cut from the show, which is fine. Again, I'm not deducting points for this. It's just interesting how it's different. But they sort of have to make the decision very quickly. And that might be a criticism I have of the show too. Like they decide to take on the Ellie thing very quickly, and we sort of don't get a lot of those quieter moments of them sort of thinking it through. Like there's no moment in this of Joel saying to Tess, "I'm not doing this," and you know the implication of it is like, I don't want to be around like a daughter right now. And Tess sort of understands but says it's just cargo, Joel, or whatever. Now I think she said something about cargo in that scene, but it doesn't hit the same. Now they do have the quiet moment in the room, but even that I think is handled a little better in the game. But it was still done very competently in the show. But there are little differences like that. Are Marlene and the other girl meant to be sisters or friends or girlfriends? To me, it just seemed like she was like her second in command. They have very different skin pigments. I don't know if they could be like cousins or something. I don't think they're sisters, but they could be girlfriends. I don't know. We've already got Ellie around, and they do mention Riley very early here. Oh, another little thing that they mentioned very early is that they mentioned the slavers very early. I don't think there's ever any mention of slavers in the first game, just hunters or whatever. But obviously the slavers are who Ellie encounters in California at the end of the first game. At the end of the second game, rather. And obviously Abby and... oh my god. What's his name? How am I forgetting Lev's name? But they obviously encounter him too. But yes, that was also interesting mentioning them. Having the dude from the radio tower. It's interesting that Tommy seemingly won't have been in Wyoming for very long when we get back to him. Though I guess it'll have been a few months because... because it'll be a few months before they actually get to Wyoming. I guess that sort of helps with the motivation and why it's they sort of so quickly accept the Ellie mission because they're going that way anyway to look after Tommy. I don't know why the Tess in the original game would never, I think, go that far for like Tommy. It is interesting that she's sort of just immediately down. Yeah, she's immediately down for the mission in the show. Not talking about anime/manga, as the passion is saying. No, yes, indeed. Live action television based on a video game, if you can believe it. That we liked, if you can believe it. I think that's all my notes, really, but there are certainly other things to talk about. What were we just saying? We were talking about the Tommy relationship. Tess is a character. Tess as a character is very blunt and sort of violent and abrasive in the game. Whereas, like, in the show, we meet her, she's, like, being held hostage, and she's got bruises all over her face, and she's sort of negotiating for her life desperately, and then she gets out by that bomb happening or whatever, and then she gets arrested, and she's screaming and stuff. It's a very, very different characterization. She doesn't come off as tough and hard and just sort of resourceful, I guess, and, like, surviving. And I think it is her earlier in the episode that doesn't want to throw the little girl / boy, I assumed it was a little boy with the shoes, into the fire, which is not really a Tess thing either. I assume that was her at the beginning, though I'm not certain. But maybe it wasn't, because I think she would have been being held hostage at that point. I'm not sure. But nonetheless, the Tess is a lot less... edgy is not the right word. She's a lot softer, I guess, than in the show, which is interesting. And maybe a change that I don't like, I'm not sure. I saw that was a talking point going into the show, as people said that the majority of the human enemies are just generic shooters, so I assume that the enemy factions will be fleshed out a little. There is like a girl leader of a faction or something that they were promoting a lot in the marketing, so I assume she'll come into play at some point. They did try and make the Fedra people a little more human. Like, we got the one dude who obviously we kill at the end, who's needs oxy to fall asleep at night, and the one girl who was like nice to the kid and like comforted him as they were going to euthanize him. And obviously the Fedra agent at the beginning goes out to grab him, whereas I feel like there is a problem in the first game of people being a little too evil, which is funny because the second game, I guess it's just because we have fleshed out motivations for everything everybody does in the second game. But they're just a little too generically evil, I guess. Like, Fedra agents will shoot you, whatever. They don't give a fuck. And hunters will kill you and rape you and eat you and chop you up, and they don't care. Whereas in the second game, even the slavers don't feel as like nihilistic as like a generic hunter. They also have more personality and stuff like that. But yeah, I thought that was a random person, just a random showcase that Joel can show kids into the fire. There was an issue that I was like, are we getting to the point where Joel is being too much of a good guy? Because when he did that for that woman, that might not have been Tess, I guess. But they did keep a lot of the Joel grayness in. Like, he does leave 2 families behind as they're leaving. And you see that first family from across the street after he tells them to go inside and lock the door get eaten by the neighbors. And then obviously the famous shot of them leaving a family on the highway. Sarah in that scene was a little more whinier in the show too, which is another change. But yeah. What else was there? I got the episode up in a fucking tab. I'm sure if I scroll through a little bit, there'll be shit to comment on. We obviously see Sarah trying to fix the watch. We see her at school a little bit. I really felt like all of this felt very tonally in the show. It felt Druckmanised. I like that Tommy would swear all the time around Sarah, but Joel never would. It was a neat little touch of like the uncle that comes around and swears versus your dad who doesn't like the swearing. I thought that was cute. Tommy is played like... Tommy is sort of presented as a bit of an idiot in the game too, whereas here... Because obviously he ends up in like jail because he was trying to fight a dude that went crazy on a waitress, which is again another build up to like something's going on here because there's like fighter jets and everything going around in the city, and it maybe that was a dude in the first stages of what do you call it, being zombified, and Tommy was saving a waitress. But even if it wasn't, if it was just some drunk dude, he was still like trying to save a waitress or whatever. The cops didn't listen to him. if we're believing Tommy, but it makes him seem like a bit more of a fuck up, but like a good guy, and he seems pretty competent throughout the episode. There is like Tommy says the wrong thing a lot in the prologue of the original game or something like that. The particular, like, they actually made the soldier that shoots Sarah more evil, I guess, in the show than in the game, because in the game he has like but sir, there's a little girl or whatever. I guess that sort of gives away that he's about to shoot them more in the game, and maybe they wanted to avoid that in the show. But I did think he didn't put that much of a fight up. I guess the game dude didn't either. But I know that was a notable omission I was thinking of as I was watching it. We've got the kid walking up. We've got him clearing bodies. Joel puts his name down to clean shit or something the next day to get some more cards. He's making deal with Fedra agents. Then we've got the old Tess situation and her introduction. We get Ellie's introduction. They did have Ellie having like a code name or something. Well, I guess her code name for herself was Victoria or something, Vivian or something. Start with a V, I'm pretty sure. Maybe it didn't. I'm just making a fool of myself. And I think it's supposed to be a break the ice moment when Marlene knows that her name is Ellie. I did like the scene with the doctor radio dude. Or maybe he was just a radio dude and they were all coming to like send out messages or something. I guess I assume they were a doctor. But there's really no evidence that they were a doctor, huh? I liked his little line that like, oh, either I'm listening or my wife's listening or my son's listening. Not the stupid one, God bless him, but the smart one. That was a great little detail. That felt like a Druckman line. But we also get Joel taking the pills himself and like passing out. Now I think this is another bit of like a more contemporaneous social commentary, because there's like a opiates epidemic in America and maybe in the rest of the world. I don't know. Sort of showing that, reflecting that in the characters. He takes pills to pass out, and then Tess comes home. That scene is also very different, again, from Tess's perspective. I don't know, I feel like Tess is such a fun character in the games, and this Tess isn't that much yet. What matters is that Robert fucking sent them just great Tess lines at the beginning. And her delivery is so good, that actress. Maybe too steep of shoes for this HBO actress to fill. I feel like Marlene was one of the highlights of the episode, because now I'm thinking of the first scene where she walks in and she's being questioned about what the fuck they're doing and how she orders people around in this scene. It's fucking sick. And then her basically revealing that she's immune and winning over the second in command. Then she has the scene with Ellie. It's fucking sick. But yeah, I think everything else we've kind of talked about. Am I missing anything, chat? Anything else we should bring up? It's sort of the ending scene where we're trying to mirror the game a little bit as we're sneaking around. Yeah, and then we kill our one friend. I guess another thing I didn't really like was, I don't know if I like the ending of the episode. I feel like it's a little bit, and I don't even like it the way they explained it in the inside the episode. Starting to think these inside the episodes are just bad every time you watch them. Make things stupider. But him being like he forgets that it isn't his daughter behind him, and then he just beats him to death or whatever. I think he tackles him, and Tess is the one that kills him in the game, right? Like we're cucking Tess in the adaptation, I guess. She might be dead at the end of the next episode. I don't think she's lasting longer than episode 3. Episode 4 would probably be Bill then. And we do in the trailer see some more, what seems to be Bill and Frank before the pandemic, I guess, which is interesting. I wonder if every time we meet a new character to flesh them out, we'll see them pre-pandemic and we'll get some flashbacks throughout the episode. But yeah, we'll have to see. What was I saying before that? Oh, the ending where he sort of hulks out. And they also make this a point in the inside the episode of sort of Ellie liking that he did that for her or something, and sort of the look she has on her face, which I think is trying to, and it's not a retcon because obviously these are two different continuities. but for lack of a better word, retcon that Ellie is sort of this very violent person, sort of innately or something, rather than her slowly devolving into it and then it escalating with the revenge mission in the second game, or escalating like with the David stuff. Another cute little moment was when the Firefly tried to come up to enroll, what do you call it, recruit Joel, and he's like, if you're going to tell me to look for the light, I'll break your fucking jaw or something. That was a great little bit. But also he's pissed off because even in this version it seems like Tommy has been won over to the Fireflies side, though he used to run with the Fireflies in the game, and sort of gotten away from that. And there's that other old dude that Ellie and Dina talk about at the beginning of the second game, who was an old Firefly with Tommy, which is all interesting backstory and stuff like that. But yeah, that last scene, I don't know how I felt about that. I think in the inside the episode they said similar personalities and they're perfect for each other, but everybody else should watch out or something. But everything with like the light interactions they did have seemed very good. And again, I really like Bella Ramsey, so an increased focus with just like them two and Tess next episode probably. And then a lot more of just them individually. Well, not individually, but as a couple individually. They're not a couple. The father-daughter relationship by themselves is what I'm trying to say. Is something that I could grow to like. I saw people talking about them removing spores. What do you think about that? Yeah, somebody was complaining about that in the Discord too. I mean, there was a moment where I'd forgotten that, and when they first saw the body, I was like, oh no, they were outside the door and something was placed in front of it, and then they saw the blood leaking through, and it's on the other side, the Fireflies were fighting Fedra. No, they were fighting Robert's dudes, and Fedra was about to show up. But I was like, oh, they're going to have to put their masks on before they go through the door or something. So I had completely forgotten about that because I was thinking that. But I mean, I don't care really at all. They can do whatever they want on that front. But other than that, how long have we been going? I think we've got like 40 minutes on the pilot. Ari said if he has stuff to say, he might join us in future weeks. I think that's all I really have to say. I thought it was, we'll say great. It's pretty good. I'd give it like an 8 or, probably an 8 or an 8 or a 9 out of 10. I thought it was very good. I liked it a lot. I'm excited for next week. It says here on my binge thing, new episodes out, 1 p.m. AEDT, which I think is an hour off when I think it'll be 12. What is it? I always forget 12 in the afternoon is 12 p.m. That'll be when the episodes come out for me. But we are doing one a week. We will probably have one video up every week on the second channel too. Hopefully along with movie night. Though I'm getting there with that. But yeah, so overall thoughts, it was very good. And that's all I think I have to say about the pilot. I'm very interested to see how successful it is, if it's the next big thing for HBO like they're trying to build it up to be. I don't know, the normies don't have their reaction out yet, and for House of the Dragon they might. They probably don't. I feel like they would never have their reactions out before. I guess they had their reactions out sometimes before I came to record with Ari. Usually they would be uploading them at some point around this time, I guess. We'll see if every reaction channel has clued into the hype and wants to capitalize on it by having their videos out as quickly as possible and integrating them into their schedules. We'll have to see. That trailer did have a shit ton of views on it, so maybe it will be. That'd be exciting, just for Neil Druckmann and his reputation and Naughty Dog, and might, escalate them, elevate them onto a higher pedestal. Could be cool. Uncharted TV series coming next. That'd be a fun time. But yes, everything will be interesting from here, and I have faith now that it'll be good. But with that being said, we've exhausted everything there is to say, I think, now. See you back next week. Stay tuned to the second channel. There should be more content to come, and hopefully more content to come on the main channel. What a fucked up scenario it'll be if I end up making a scripted video on the TV show before I make any of the million of scripted videos I want to make about the games. That would truly be a nightmare scenario, and one that I'm not going to put it past me to end up actualizing. But regardless of terrible futures that we all want to avoid, let's sign off here. Support links in the description below. Thanks.